I'm Logan Crawford, and every now and then a book comes along that turns conventional wisdom upside down, inside out, or at least moves the mark. Such a book is this one. We're about to talk to the author, Richard Alabone, about it right now. It is called Making Sense of Life, exploring the relationship between DNA and telepathy. Richard, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Good, thank you.
It's my pleasure to have you. Tell the folks at home a little bit about what your book is all about.
Well, it's called Making Sense of Life, and the scientists have got it all wrong. In fact, science, they just do not understand the science of life. Basically, the first bit is DNA. We all know sort of roughly about DNA and genes and things. And the biologists know that there is no explanation. It's not a book of instructions, and they just don't know what it is. Very strange. And the evidence that shows this, they've got a screwy theory which it's called epigenetics, which tries to explain how DNA works, but there's no evidence that it works that way. So there has to be another way that it works, and that's where my theories come along.
Now, if it was just DNA, it would seem to me that we would be completely beholden to our genes. We'd be like mom, we'd be like dad, or something in between. There wouldn't be much more of a person there. But we see great poets, great artists, great scientists, great doctors come from what some would say are ordinary people, ordinary genes. So there is something more there, don't you think?
Oh, yes. Yeah. DNA definitely controls life, and it does it by copying each generation. We know we are copies of our parents, and we know that. And so the science has to go along with that idea, and that copying mechanism enables a fetus to grow. And when the child is growing in the womb, it enables the fetus to be copying its parents in terms of looks and habits and all sorts of things. We are like our parents, and we know that. We say, like father, like son. And that same mechanism, which is copying, carries on during life, occasionally, under certain circumstances. And we see it, in fact, as mind-to-mind transmission, which we call telepathy. And so one has to think of the explanation for life and the explanation for DNA in terms of telepathy and the paranormal, which scientists don't want to know about. They say it can't happen, so it doesn't happen.
Telepathy, would you define that for me? Is it what we conventionally think of as somebody having an extrasensory perception?
Yes, oh yeah, well, that's right. It all started for me when I was about 3 years old. My mother said to me, think of a number and I'll tell you what it is. And that, and she did it lots of times, and that stayed with me all my life. And I've been trying for 88 years to discover how and why it works. And I discovered it. It works because it is an essential part of life, an essential part of growth of not only humans, but bacteria, and all life relies on something which does this copying. There is a carrier of information, like there's a carrier for light and heat and these things, but the carrier has nothing to do with the carrier of light and so on. So there we go.
Why do you think science and scientists and researchers are reluctant or hesitant or ignoring of these special abilities that human beings have?
Well, it's just, we're not that special, actually. We're just another monkey, if you like. I know I look a bit like one as I get old. But
we all resemble them on certain days, right?
Yeah, yeah, right. But no, all life relies on something which the scientists don't know and have never dreamt of. But it is true, there is a carrier of this information, and I've hit upon by chance really what it is, and then the evidence. I discovered the evidence, and it went on, and I followed the evidence.
And the evidence led you to what? To your conclusion, or did you actually find something within the human being that has this telepathic component?
Well, a lot of people believe in telepathy or have had experiences which they can't explain, and there's spiritualism and various paranormal experiences which people have, which is all based on, I think, on telepathy. And that is the same mechanism that causes growth in the womb and growth as we go older. I mean, if you cut your hand or have a damage a knee or something, it tends to repair itself. Mm-hmm. And that repairing is copying the species information, if you like. You see, in the womb we start off copying the human species, which we don't start. We don't grow as an elephant or a pig or anything. We go through life or through the growth process as a human, and then towards the end of after about 6 months, probably in pregnancy, then we get information from our parents, which determines the shape of our ears and the color of our eyes and the color of our hair, color of our skin, and all the attributes of a family, because families tend to be, look like each other all the time. So the thing is then, what is this carrier all about? That's the crux of the matter. I discovered that as part of the American Stargate problem, they made an investigator, a fellow called Spottiswoode, made an investigation into telepathy and successful telepathy, and found that at certain times of the day it was 3.8 times more successful than at other times in the day, which is a terrific difference. He discovered that telepathy varies during the day by 3.8 times, but it's not, in fact, time. It's not clock time, it's sidereal time, which is the time of the stars. And so that's what he discovered. And the other scientific program investigation, which ties up with that, was done by a French astrologer who discovered that people are linked to a planet. And if you put these two scientific information together, if you put it together, it points to the fact that there is a carrier from planets.
Is that sort of what astrology is all about? The influence of the stars and the planets and so forth?
Well, of course, yeah. Astrology has always been about predicting things due to your planets and time of birth and so on. And And in this particular respect, this fellow Gauquelin, this Frenchman, discovered he investigated the birth time of 36,000 people, which was an incredible job. But he managed to find out that there is a link between birth time and the type of person that you grow up to be. Mm. And the scientists didn't like it, of course. They didn't like it at all. And but if you look at the time that this worked, this is a child's birth time is tied to the rising of its planet. That is what he discovered. And that rising of the planet ties up exactly with the evidence that this fellow Spottiswoode got from the Stargate problem, the American problem studying telepathy. And that then leads us to a decision, which of course scientists just think is absolutely potty, that there is a carrier emanating from planets. And if you look at, and the carrier is in fact spinning particles. And there is science which understands about spinning particles. They're studying spinning particles for the next range of computers. So it all ties up. This is real science, and it proves the point that there is this carrier which is not understood, but explains life, and it explains telepathy. And that is my theory, and the evidence just proves it. It does.
It's a fascinating theory. It is tested throughout the ages. I mean, because if you look at ancient Roman cultures, Greek cultures, Chinese cultures, they all believed in the power of the stars, the power of the planets. And modern man or modern woman has thought that, well, they're smarter than that. We know something more than that, and have kind of turned their back on the ancients. But the ancients have existed throughout antiquity for a reason. And that's because there is something to their theories. Average people like me and you see it. Not to say that you're average, you've spent your whole life studying this kind of stuff. Your background actually is in studying psychic phenomenon. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I've been a member of the Society for Psychical Research in London for 40, 50 years, but I was a development engineer. You see, I worked for Marconi's, the television company people, and so I learned to study why things work. That was my job, finding out how and why things work, and I put that towards the experience I'd had as a child of telepathy. There had to be an answer. I knew there was an answer, and I just kept following the evidence, and all the time I was finding new things which all fitted together to create this new theory, which is viewed by science as completely potty. I do understand that. They don't want to know about this, and so I have great difficulty in trying to promote the idea, you see.
Well, the idea is promoted now. You have it out there on the Spotlight Network. We're so happy to have you as a guest here on our show today. The name of the book is called Making Sense of Life, Exploring the Relationship between DNA and Telepathy. Exploring the relationship between DNA and telepathy. And if the scientists of modern era haven't given you enough information about what's going on up here and understanding what's happening in your heart, what's happening in your life, I think this book by Richard Alabone will answer a lot of the questions that you've had hints to all along, but now they're documented in a very scientific method. Richard, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Good, thank you.
Pleasure having you again, folks. At home, the name of the book is Making Sense of Life, exploring the relationship between DNA and telepathy. You can pick it up on Amazon. You can download it on Kindle. It's highly recommended. It is a fascinating read. And to the viewers at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.